Welcome to Sting Day 2020 and welcome to Stockholm. I hope you are all well and healthy. For the first time ever at Sting Day, the scheduled program this year is open to everyone. And we're glad to have so many new guests joining us. We have 350 registered investors from 18 countries. In the matchmaking sessions, we have 140 investors, speed meeting with 70 carefully selected companies from the Sting ecosystem. To those of you who have attended Sting Day in previous years, you should know that we miss seeing you all in person here in Stockholm. Despite the challenging times, we decided to bring people together in a digital Sting Day, to contribute to the ecosystem here in Stockholm and to provide our companies with great international contacts to support their future growth. So, today with me I have really a good group of experienced entrepreneurs and investors as panelists. We will be live from the Sting studio here in Stockholm. We will also visit friends in Munich, London, and New York, who will share with us what the latest investment trends are in their cities and their views on the Nordics. So, in Munich, we have Eva Traetz moderating the discussion. Glad to have you with us, Eva.
Glad to be with you. Hi.
And in London, we have Amy Lewin. Glad to have you here.
Hello.
Hello. In New York, it is still morning, so we say good morning to Anna Throne-Holst.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. We look forward to talking more with you all in a short while. But first, I'd like to thank all our partners who make it possible to operate Sting. And a special thank you to the region of Stockholm, Amazon Web Services, Sifted, and the American Chamber of Commerce in New York for partnering with us and putting on this event. Now a short introduction to Sting and what we have been up to since we started Sting 19 years ago. We hope you think this was exciting, and we are all amazed at how our portfolio have developed over 19 years. We truly see our entrepreneurs as heroes. Now, let's move on, and I would like to introduce you to Mimmi Billing, senior reporter and Nordic correspondent at Sifted, who will take us through the rest of the program today. Welcome, Mimmi.
Thank you very much, Per.
Good to have you here, and I leave it to you now.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Well, hi everyone, and once again, welcome to Sting Day 2020. We are obviously going to head off to Munich, London, and New York later to our panels there, where we're going to get the latest insights and news from them. I'm looking forward to that. But we're first going to introduce you to our panel here in Stockholm. So, welcome. I say welcome first of all to Tor Rauden Kjellstigen, co-founder of All Ears.
Thank you.
Caroline Valerud, both partner at Valerud Ventures, but also co-founder of Volumental. And last but not least, Johan Brenner, general partner at Creandum.
Thank you, Mimmi. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. And if I start with you, Johan, I mean, you have obviously, Creandum has a big fund. The latest one was on 265 million euros. And it's focused on early stage companies in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is nice.
Yeah.
And well, obviously we are in Sweden,
yeah.
and we care about the Swedish startups as well. So what do you think is the biggest challenge that they have expanding
from Sweden? Well, I think first we should remember that what's made us great, all the startups up here in Sweden, is for the past 20 years or before that, we've been so good at going international. So we have actually been, I think, world class, even if not the best in the world, because the home market has been small, and to create big companies, you have to go international. So I think we should have a lot of credit for that. But if you think about going international today, I think when you start a company, you are international. I mean, the world is flat. So, but if you mean like going international, being selling or localizing or things like that, then I think it's about speed, because you are international the day one. The second is probably get the right team in place to expand. What that means is maybe hiring somebody or partnering with somebody that's done it before in Sweden, or maybe recruiting somebody from the outside. And then maybe choosing what country you should go to. I mean, you should follow your customers, because that's the most important thing. But then you should sort of take into account whether the market is large enough, or where your suitability of your product and product market fit. So those are some of the things that I would focus on.
I mean, it's interesting, because I suppose that now, in comparison to 5-10 years ago, you have to then expand a lot quicker. And the speed issue here is obviously also that you also need to raise money quicker, I suppose. I mean, do you?
Well, yeah, yes and no. I think it's on the one hand, you need capital to expand quickly, but on the other hand, it's cheaper than ever to start your company. I mean, there are platforms everywhere. You start from scratch with monthly payments of very few dollars. Than 20 years ago when I started, my first company is $5 million for the database, so that was difficult. But so I think, but and then I also think the capital is there. There are a lot of great investors up here in the Nordics to invest at all stages, pre-seed, seed, and so forth. And I think today these investors come from backgrounds that have done it before and internationalized. So I think the money's there and the expertise is there. And then to go beyond that, there's lots of growth capital outside of Sweden and in Sweden to take the company all the way.
Caroline, I mean, as you are an investor, obviously, as well, so it'd be interesting to hear your views on this. But you're also a co-founder of Volumental, which is a footwear technology company. Yep. And you have customers in around 40 different countries now. And how did you do that expansion?
A good question. Well, I think it started with creating a product which was unique, it still is, which means that customers have come to us from around the world because they can't find what we do anywhere else. So that has helped a lot. And then we actually mostly work with the larger brands and retailers within footwear, and then they're the ones who push out our product to all their stores. So that helps a lot. We don't have to have operations in 42 countries. We're all based in Stockholm. And of course, before Corona, we traveled loads to go meet with our customers.
But I know also that some of your co-founders are not actually Swedish.
Yes,
right?
And that was a great thing. So we were 4 co-founders, and of those, 2 of us are more, American or English speaking. So I've spent most of my working life in English. I studied at Cambridge, and my co-founder Alper, he did his PhD here, but then he's been at NASA and Google X in the US, so working in English, and that has meant that we've been able to attract great talent that doesn't have to speak Swedish from the beginning, which means we can hire better people. And also that those people naturally were speaking English at the office every day, which means that it is easier to then go and speak English at a pitch competition or with customers. And a lot of the people we have, they're not just English speaking, but they have another language or 2, which means we can speak to our customers in their home language.
That's interesting, because then obviously it's easier to go into a country if you already have, you don't have to have a co-founder, but someone senior that actually can introduce you to that market.
Exactly, and that's it's fun walking around the office and hearing like every language being spoken in different sales meetings.
Yeah. I know also for a fact that you actually got some help in the beginning of your journey with the media.
Yes.
And I think that's interesting because tell us about it.
Yeah. So when we started, we were just a research project at KTH. And we launched this 3D scanning app to the world on the web. And it was great. We got so much media attention. So the BBC wrote about us. Lots of other media outlets wrote about us globally, which meant that our first customers were not in Sweden, but rather an Australian, an American, who found us that way. And of course, it's very hard to get media if you don't work on it a bit. And I think there we had a good combination of working in an interesting field as well as doing something completely new. So, deep tech is great that way because you're doing it's exciting stories and completely new stuff.
Do you think that's easier than being another fintech app and getting media attention?
Yeah. Of course, if it's a fintech app which is meant for the Swedish market, you're probably not going to get an international news story to cover you, unfortunately. So, yeah,
that's true. Tor, you're co-founder of All Ears, which is like a media monitoring service for, podcasts, YouTube, and lots of other, more like media, spoken media.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting because that's obviously something that you have managed to do in different languages then, I suppose.
Sure.
So I know also that you managed to get Walmart as a customer in the US, which you quite recently actually expanded to. I think most people would be like, wow, how did you get Walmart?
Yeah, so it's been quite a long journey since we started in 2016. We wanted to build something that's international and global at first day. So we built it scalable in terms of the infrastructure, but also modularity with languages and so on. And we started in Sweden because it's a good pilot test bed market, but we always wanted to go to the US because this is where everything is happening in new media and where everything exciting is happening. So we sort of targeted that market. And then one day we got a sign up from Walmart.
Okay, I think maybe our other European panels here in London and in Munich might not agree that only in the US things are happening. But
that's up to them.
That's up to them. That's true. It's true. And I think, for you then, when you did embark to go to the US, you have some funding, but maybe not that much. How did you go about doing that?
So, it's not only about going there and meeting people, it's also about positioning the product, understanding the market, and making marketing material which works in that field. So I think we managed to align a lot of different stuff towards that market with quite few resources, and made the right decisions.
So when you actually launched in the US or before that, I mean, what was the greatest tip that you got, or that you didn't get and would like to, what would I wanted to get?
Yeah, I mean, we tried both, like the structured approach, which is like aligning all different aspects of going to this market or that market and giving points for certain qualifications and market sizes and so on. But in the end of the day, it's about what you're most excited about, like, because you have to spend so much time on working on getting into that market, and it would be a lot of fun, but also a lot of really tough work. So I think that's an advice, that you should really focus on a market where you want to spend a lot of time, which you can work on for a long time, even when it's tough.
Yeah, but you were onto that point a little bit, Johan, as well, like that you were supposed to really choose a market where you have your customers, but as Tor is saying here, well, you should also choose a market where you really want to go and be in.
Yeah, but I think passion plays a big role. There's an equation of things you should look at. But US is, of course, both a large market, and if you have passion for it, I mean, then, and if it's product market fit, then I think it's a no-brainer. I was just thinking about another aspect with COVID. I think COVID has actually, there's a lot of bad things about COVID, but what remote has had a new meaning for everybody, recruiting, selling, etc. And I think that's going to have decrease the cost further of going international. So you don't have to be so local in terms of physical presence anymore. You can learn how to go international and work internationally without actually being there.
But then I have a question, because I mean, as Volumental, you are hardware as well, and I just spoke to another hardware company in Finland who said it had been really difficult to get US investors because they haven't been able to actually come and try the product. This was a VR company, so it's not strange. But I mean, what do you see in that?
We're in over 2,000 stores already, so it's pretty easy, almost any city in the world at least, to go and try it out, which helps.
Yeah,
of course, with a physical product, it's going to be harder. You can send it there, but with a digital product, it's easier, right? So then you can actually try it out remotely, and I mean, we make investments now without meeting the teams physically.
Okay.
And I think also trying to create like quality promotion videos where you actually show how the product works is worth a lot these days, because that means you can more easily explain the product even when it is hard to try it out live. That's true for all, not just hardware startups. Yeah.
Has that been the same for you at all years, that it's been easier because you don't actually have a physical product, you can just send them tests, to...
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we also have to do some alignments for the product, but it's really easy for us to start off on a new market area. So, for example, when I gave a demo sometime, I ran our product on Korean content or Japanese content, and we were able to search for really esoteric terms in media that you haven't heard of. So it's easy to make an impression, a cool impression with our product.
Yeah, you have had to educate the market quite a lot as well in Sweden to start off with, anyway. I mean, is that, I suppose it's the same with Volumental and many of your portfolio companies as well, Johan. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that with time to educate a market, it's going quicker as well? Because that we are, I mean, everything is going quicker, right?
yeah, I think so. And there's so many new behaviors now through COVID, and companies have had to think in new ways, and also, I guess, time has been freed up in a lot of ways because there's fewer mingles and events. So maybe there's more time also to try out some new products and really think, okay, how are we as a company going to survive long term? And then it makes sense to look at new startup products as well.
But Johan, how has the companies that actually have reached out to Creandum, have that changed in a way during COVID?
Well, I think during March, April, and May, I think there was a large slowdown everywhere. I mean, I think personally, I thought this would be the end of the universe, and we would actually worried would our LPs have money to continue to invest? But this turned around quite quickly, and I think now we're back to normal, even higher, sort of level of engagement than before, despite that we can't meet the entrepreneurs. So we work a lot look at lots of new opportunities across Europe today. And we meet them digitally, as we've done very much before. So,
It's very exciting to look at those graphs across Europe, because I think maybe Sweden, we have been a little bit fortunate when it comes to COVID as well, and our ways of living hasn't maybe changed as much as in elsewhere in Europe and in the US as well. And well, we actually, with that, we're just about to head over to Germany. But before that, we are going to see a company that actually made quite a, have managed to expand into Germany, as many other Swedish companies have. But this company is a Sting company, and it's called AppJobs.
So my name is Alok Alstrom. I'm the CEO and co-founder of AppJobs. At AppJobs, we help people work better through apps. For example, driving Uber, and delivering food with Foodora, or making a living through one of the many hundreds of apps out there in the so-called gig economy. It started 3.5 years ago, and realized that this shift into a future where people work with apps is going to be a big one, and it's going to be the norm to work through apps. I saw that there's a need for a platform where workers can compare and rate and review and find all the different resources needed to work in the gig economy. So today, 3.5 years later, we cover about 40 markets, and we have over 2 million members on our platform. And we add around 20 to 30,000 new members every week. In 3 to 5 years, our ambition is that AppJobs is the place that you think of when you go to work in the morning. When you go to work, you think of logging into the AppJobs app, seeing what are the different work opportunities that you have today, which one is the best one, and really guiding you through your workday. In the future, with financial recession, getting people into jobs will be the most challenging things for societies, and we're on it.
Well, it's great to hear about the ambitions of a company like AppJobs, I must say. And with that, I say hi to Eva in Munich, Germany. Hi. We're really eager here to hear what you have to say about the German tech scene and how you look at the Nordics. So I'll hand it over to you.
Tack så mycket, Mimi. Thank you so much, and welcome to Munich. I'm so excited to have two amazing experts, investors with me here today in Munich. Welcome to Rainer, our host here at Holzbrick Ventures, and welcome to Marie-Helene from Speed Invest. Let's jump right into it, okay? Rainer, you announced today your investment in Dance, a mobility startup, really exciting, that is actually founded by a Swedish team. Tell us more about that, and I'm really excited to hear what is it that we can learn here in Germany from the Nordic founders.
Absolutely. So yes, we announced that investment today, and we backed the former SoundCloud founders, Eric and Alex, alongside Christian, founder of Jimdo, and Eric and Alex, as Swedish guys, came to Germany to basically found SoundCloud many years back. And I'm not saying this is our answer to backing Swedish teams, that they need to come to Germany, that we back them. I think part of the answer is just that in the Nordics, there are such strong investors, such as Johan with Creandum or the Northzone guys, that actually we've always been fascinated by the Swedish scene, and I'm going to tell you the key reasons about it. But we had difficulties getting into it because of no local presence and really strong investors. So what we always thought that we could learn, and what fascinates us about Swedish startups, are mainly three reasons, and Johan mentioned two of them. In our view, Swedish founders have an extremely strong taste for products, especially on the consumer side, and really work hard and achieve very nice product market fits. This is really something that stands out and that we as Engineering Germany can learn a lot from. The second reason that we always observed that for some reason, Swedish entrepreneurs really like to tackle tough challenges, go deep and really go long. So by the examples such as iSettle, Spotify, Klarna, you see they are in the game to build really large companies. and also driven maybe by the third factor that they really like to internationalize. Johan described it as a necessity because the domestic market is not large enough. But it's clearly an aspiration that you could see, and those were always key reasons that were fascinating us about the Nordic scene.
Absolutely. And I mean, perseverance, working hard, and thinking big is certainly something that founders need today in the new COVID reality. So the next question goes to that point. We discussed that a bit in Stockholm already. But in today's reality, which is so challenging for new founders that haven't started a company ever before and are raising the money for the first time in their life today remotely, what advice would you, both of you, Marie-Helene and Rainer, give to these founders today when they're fundraising, amongst others to you?
I think similar to what Johan said, I think the good news is that basically barriers even came down more aggressively, faster than we thought. Everybody is video conferencing, hardly anybody is meeting. And that means independent of where you are, investors are very approachable. Also because our side of the market, the investor market, has become much more professional, competitive. There's a lot of money available. And investors are super receptive to new founding teams, are working hard and fast to get access to the best teams. And these are good news for the entrepreneurs. And I think my key message is just to entrepreneurs to use that momentum. It's not that you need to exploit the momentum and think you can call crazy terms, but it's a very good environment for the entrepreneur side, as investors are super receptive. Most of us sitting in at least partial home offices, you're almost hungry for deal flow that's out there. So just ping any investor as an entrepreneur. What would you say, Marie-Helene?
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think this competitive situation that we have gives founders a chance that they really should do their due diligence very well. So you have the chance to elaborate which investor is best suited for you. The investor that really understands your product. I think this is important. And take the time also to talk to other founders, that already are have been invested by this VC. So I think that's important. The second thing is maybe also in these remote times, it's much harder to build relationships. So probably you should start earlier. So once you have found as a founder, a VC that it might be interesting to you, an investor that might be interesting, try to build this relationship ways before the actual fundraising part, so that you have time, even remotely, to build a certain level of trust that helps in fundraising.
That makes sense. Do you do due diligence differently nowadays, that you are checking on founders remotely because you don't meet them personally? Has that changed?
Definitely. For us, it has changed in the sense that one of the key elements in our due diligence was a physical workshop where we spent like 5 hours in one room and tried to really get deep into the challenges ahead of us. And that's something that we still try to do remotely, but of course you lose certain interactions that you cannot read that easily. So how we try to overcome is that we set up additionally to these remote workshops also bilateral one-on-one meetings, also try to understand and get a little bit of personal touch of, in the end, choosing your investor, it's like a little bit choosing your school. It sets the foundation for a lot of, things afterwards. So it's should be a well-thought decision.
I can imagine being in a boardroom is similar to being in a classroom sometimes. And next question to you, Rainer. On that topic, COVID-19, is there any new investment thesis or topic that your fund explores more now today in these circumstances because of COVID?
So obviously, I think there were changes across the board. First of all, we should say we are strictly long-term investors. We can go in very early in companies, and the typical lifespan of our engagement is 7 to 10 years. So you could easily argue that this is a temporary phenomenon, and you shouldn't care working on a 10-year horizon. Having said that, it's clearly an acceleration of many things. It accelerates the good and the bad. And I think this is what we see in the industry across the board. So business models that were questionable before the situation, they get into downward problems right now. And the ones that build on the mega trends that are already out there, they get a positive acceleration. And obviously, we look at some sectors that we haven't looked at before so intensely, like future of work, remote work, even city layouts, how things change, how people will commute to where, what daily lives look like. These are things that we take more into our focus as of today. But then mostly we're looking into the sectors that we already covered and the models. What does it mean? Is it a good time to be a travel startup right now? Maybe it's something that it's not easy to pitch these days. Is it a future of work startup? It's just easier. And we look at the changes in our hypotheses across the board.
That makes sense. Call out to all the founders that have startups in the future of workspace or flexible lifestyles. Send your pitch deck to Rainer. Marie-Helene, I want to focus now on your investment thesis. Your fund is divided into 5 different areas, from consumer to fintech to deep tech. You yourself sit in the industrial tech fund. And I'm wondering whether that's a trend that you see in VCs, that you need to specialize on a specific area to win the best deals today.
Well, Speed Invest actually is a so-called operational VC, which means that we engage heavily with our portfolio companies. And I think a prerequisite to do so is that you need to bring a certain level of expertise, of understanding for the specific field, but also that you can bring a network into the relationship. So that was the reason why we said if we want to really support and engage operationally, we need to specialize and we need to focus. And so in the end, we feel it's a big advantage, and it helps us to, out in that battle for the best startups to compete and win also there. But it also helps us, of course, identifying and finding and also selecting the best startups as you have a certain expertise. So in a way, what happens with this sector-specific setup is you build a network, where everything in the end works well together and helps to bring some benefits. Is it the LPs that then support and engage with the startups, or is it the portfolio companies among each other that all have the same focus? That helps a lot. Is this a phenomena that is happening everywhere? I wouldn't say so. I think there is 2 tendencies we can see in Europe at the moment. One is very specialized niche investors, rather small usually, kind of boutique approaches. And on the other hand, fortunately, we can see a lot of investors or VCs growing bigger and playing a little bit on the numbers game, so spreading the risk and spreading also not only sector-wise but also stage-wise. And I think both are working and both have a right for existence.
And do you think, having your broad perspective from Speed Invest on different industries, is there any particular area, industry, where you would say to international founders, with this industry, it really makes sense to enter the German market?
Mm-hmm. So I think on one hand, of course, Germany, and if you expand it to the DACH region, is a region with 100 million inhabitants. So also for B2C, of course, it's a huge market opportunity. But what I feel, what is really specific about this region is, in a way, we are the European powerhouse for industry. Germany alone accounts for 30% of all the industrial production in whole of Europe. So there is tons and tons, 1.5 million active companies out there that are all at the moment struggling with the digitization. And I think startups could be are a great enabler. And now with COVID, even the last, industrial company has understood that they cannot go without the digital transformation. So for that, I think we are a little bit the heaven for B2B startups, and welcoming, of course, Swedish, but also all other startups entering and coming to Germany here.
A heaven to B2B startups, and also partner with Gemütlichkeit, right, that we have in Munich, that demonstrates itself mostly at Oktoberfest, which unfortunately this year was remote. Rainer, last question to both of you, and that's on challenges when international companies enter German markets, international founders. What challenges would you say they are likely to encounter, and how can you solve those or address them early?
In my view, many of the challenges, the traditional challenges, have strictly come down. So yes, there is still, we speak German on a daily basis, but everybody speaks English. So there is some form of language barrier, but it's not a very high one to cross. And then I think, and I'm leaving one to you, which we talked before about, but one barrier is maybe the German mentality and the culture. We tend to be very straight, very direct, roll up your sleeves and get your things done. This can be a bit odd for some people, depending on which geography you come from, but it can be a huge added value because people are straight and help you. And maybe I saw that two of my former colleagues of 3i with Reshma and Daniel are on the line for later. Maybe you can ask them what it's like to be in close cooperation with German people.
So, but I'm not German. I'm Austrian, actually. So when I came to Germany, what took me by surprise was that in Austria, it's Vienna. Probably in Sweden, it's Stockholm. It's very centered. Even in the UK, you have London. Here, it's a very decentralized structure. Yes. Yeah. So even for industry, I think you have to select carefully which region. Is it trade, or is it machinery production, or is it fintech? Then better Frankfurt, probably. Yeah. So that's one difference, and could be a barrier to quickly, adapt the whole market in Germany.
Well, none of that has stopped a lot of Nordic founders actually come here and start companies, including Erik with SoundCloud and now Dance. We definitely welcome more of those here in Germany. And with that positive note, off to you, Mimi, back to Stockholm. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ting, for having us.
Thank you so much, Eva, and the panel in Munich. I thought it was amazing and so much fun, and I like how the Germans probably are as direct and straight as we Swedes are. And I'll start with you, Johan. Investors are hungry. They were mentioning there. Are you hungry here as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the barriers are down. It's competition everywhere. I mean, we are looking at deals in Stockholm that investors from 10 different countries are looking at the same time, and so I think that's exciting, and it's a great period for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They can just choose the best ones to partner up with.
We need perhaps that kind of competition to actually be on our step a little bit as well. And I was thinking a little bit about how the German. They were mentioning obviously that the team behind this startup was coming from SoundCloud, which obviously Swedish entrepreneurs, and also I was thinking then about Delivery Hero, HelloFresh. It's a lot of Swedes who actually gone to Germany and had quite a good career there. Do you agree with them? Would you say that I don't know how much you are into the German market, but what would you say that the kind of investment scenes are like there in comparison to here?
Well, I can't speak for Germany specifically, I think, but if I compare Europe as a whole to Sweden, or just talking about Europe, I think that we do have a great scene here, and the European Union is very much working to enhance that startup ecosystem, especially within deep tech and some other sort of key areas where we're trying to become world leading and stay world leading, and that's great. And I think that Germany is definitely part of that. There's a lot of big industrials there that can be exciting to work with. So it's very. Yeah.
We love Germany. It's the biggest market in Europe. We've had an office there since 3-4 years back. We're extremely happy with the investments we've made there. The ecosystem is great. I mean, since Rocket Internet and it was mostly copying other models. These entrepreneurs have come out of there and got tired of the Rocket model and now started their own companies, and they're now innovators. And we made investments there in fintech, developer tools, logistics, so close to industry, the car industry. We invested in a Munich company called Trace doing battery analytics. I mean, I think for us it's a really important market.
I think it's also interesting because Germany is obviously a huge market, but also, I mean, they're not maybe as digitized as we are. I mean, I don't know, but do you have any German customers, Tor?
We have some Swedish customers who are covering German market through our platform.
Okay.
And as a former Berlin resident myself, I feel connected to what they say. and also they had me at the tagline, heaven for B2B.
Oh, great. Yeah. But I mean, is it actually, I mean, do you think it's as easy to enter the German market as another market that is maybe more digitalized?
Good question. I mean, German market is so big, so it's sort of big enough to build your own ecosystem within it, and that companies can have the German market as their target market, and that's it, because it's enough. It's such a big market, and I think that can be a bit challenging sometimes for the German ecosystem, that it's built by Germans for Germans sometimes.
Okay.
We have 4 portfolio companies doing B2B and selling in Germany, and that's been, it's very good. Good technical companies there, large industrials to work with. And of course, I think now during Corona times, one of the issues has been, being able to do tests together with customers and such, but that has started to open up again, I'd say. It was only a couple months when things got delayed.
It's really interesting, and we're now going to actually head over to London soon to see what they're up to and compare them later on to Germany. But first, we're going to have a look at a Sting company that thinks life's too short for a signature scent. Here's to Sniff.
My name is Tara Darakshan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sniff. It all began when I met my wonderful co-founder Lisa, and we understood immediately that we shared the same fascination about scents. We figured that it's very tricky and quite difficult to find scents that you love in a store. It's a risky choice so often that you buy a full-size bottle for a lot of money and that you'd come home and get bored of, or it doesn't really match you. By coming to Sniff, you subscribe, and each month you receive 8 milliliters of a fragrance that we've selected for you. And then you have a month to truly indulge and try the scent. And once you know that this is the one, then you can buy the full bottle via Sniff. When we were able to take the first step outside of Sweden, that was a huge milestone for us, especially when we were approached by Harvey Nichols, which we really admire. It's one of the biggest luxury department stores in the world. And they said they loved what we did and thought it was so unique and wanted us to launch within their department store. Sales are going great. We tripled our revenues last year, and at the moment we ship to 16 different countries. We're still the largest in Scandinavia and the UK, but we have our eyes on the prize within the near future to go global.
Great to hear from Sniff, and with that I'm saying hi to Amy. Hi Amy and the panel in London. I was wondering, how is the kind of the digital perfume market? Do you know anything more about it?
Personally, no, but I can ask my panelists that in a moment. So over to them. I've got Reshma from Seed Camp and I've got Daniel from Balderton here with me today. Reshma, what do you know about the digital perfume market in the UK?
Zero. But after that, I will look into it a little bit more.
Amazing. What are you looking at the moment? What are the kind of exciting sectors in London at the moment, London or the UK?
Yeah. Look, I think one of the things that we've benefited the last several months is we're very focused on digitization. So helping whether it's industry or the end consumer get much more digital. So, certainly in the event space, Hopin has been just sort of an incredible journey. The last 6 months, we only invested in them a year ago. So I think, thinking about a hybrid future, they're absolutely on the cutting edge of that. And also I think broadly, just helping companies that are helping customers digitize faster, especially in enterprise, SaaS as well. So a lot around, I think what was said before, sort of future work, and thinking about a lot kind of what employers have to think about in a hybrid future, and how do they get collaboration and employee productivity and happiness as well.
And Daniel, how have you found going hybrid? How as a VC firm has it been to adapt?
It's been relatively easy. I think for us, we're fortunate in that we can do most of our job sitting behind a computer screen. I mean, it may not be the best user experience ever, but we can do it. We can connect to all the companies we work with that we've already invested in. We can connect to each other, and we can meet entrepreneurs and talk to them. You're losing that human element, of course, that's really important in trying to connect with someone and understand if they're kind of crazy enough, incredible enough to be the next amazing founder that you want to back. That's probably the tricky bit, but by and large, it's okay.
I mean, we were kind of discussing this earlier, but I feel like some people were kind of worried maybe that without those kind of in-person events, you don't find those hidden gems. But do you think actually your job, you'll kind of stick to this model, or as soon as you can, will you be hopping on planes to go to events all in Stockholm and Munich and New York as soon as you can?
Yeah, no, I think I think we will. I mean, I think just personally, we're a team that is extroverted, kind of gregarious. And I think what we miss most is everything that happens in corridors and that sort of the serendipity. We miss it incredibly. And so it's not so much maybe the tire kicking in DD that we need to do, because when we meet founders, it is often a team of 2 or 3 people, and there isn't massive sort of DD we can do on revenue or product or things like that. But it is just the serendipity and that connection and trust you build when you can actually be physically in the same space, and it helps a lot. So yes, we're itching for when we can really get out there. I don't think it'll be the same. I think we'll say no to a lot more travel, but yes to things that have really worked well for us in the past.
Yeah. And Daniel, what kind of sectors are you particularly looking at, or types of companies at the moment?
Quite a few different things. Personally, I've made quite a few investments in the food space, which is kind of a rather broad topic, but thinking about different areas of supply chain. So I led our investment in farm, which is vertical farming, in a business called Simple Feast in Denmark, which is doing delivery of plant-based meals, and recently in a business called K-Box, which is turning existing kitchens like hotel kitchens into delivery kitchens, and they're all getting food to people in different ways and shaking up the supply chain, which I think is fascinating in a world that's getting ever bigger, where we need to control the carbon footprint of our food production. We need to get great, high quality food to people, and we need to monetize the assets that are in place for that. So that's interesting. We've been looking quite a bit at the kind of climate tech space, which is, I guess, maybe a bit trendy at the moment, but importantly so. And actually, there's a lot of great companies emerging which are beginning to tackle some really important topics. And I think we'll see a lot of stuff going on there. And then maybe finally, continuing to look at health, digital health, and ways to improve preventative medicine, to do self-diagnostics, and to accelerate drug discovery for a number of different areas.
So I feel like I agree, climate tech has suddenly become very, very trendy. Where is there a kind of particular hotspot in Europe for that? I know the Nordics, we Brits think of as a very green place. Is Sweden a hotspot, or is it kind of all over the place?
I think it's distributed. I mean, and I think that's quite true generically now in Europe. That it's there's similar things happening in different places, maybe different flavors. The area we've seen a lot of deal flow in recently is in carbon tracking and offsetting and bringing accountability to people's supply chains I've been able to understand the carbon footprint of that. But I've spoken in the last few months to companies in Germany, definitely in Sweden and in the UK on that topic.
Okay, and do you think it's going to be more a kind of consumer-led thing, or actually it will be enterprises that are, you know, the kind of big target market in a way for this?
Yeah, interestingly, the initial hypothesis was that it's probably consumers, because consumers are very conscious of this. There's a generation which are very driven to help improve the planet's chances. And for sure, there's good uptake by consumers. Actually quite difficult to monetize. But the change in the way governments and industries are stipulating what has to happen and what has to be reported actually is just driving businesses now to be much more proactive. A few weeks ago, the shipping industry made a major announcement around what they were going to do in terms of tracking the footprint of commercial shipping around the world. So actually, the bit that's probably growing faster is, I think, the commercial business side now.
Consumers, they seem like they're up for it until they have to actually pay.
But I think on that, though, the pressure is there, right? So it impacts regulatory policies and so forth. I mean, we've just done one of our newest investments, and within, again, sort of the vertical farming space, but it's all about operational efficiency. So how can you save on water, light, and so forth, and improve nutritional content of plants? So, I mean, there's actual, gains to be had, right, and cut costs, which again, producers, farms especially, need to be thinking about. So I think some of the awakening around climate change has been that actually you can save not just waste that's killing our planet, but costs as well. And nothing gets a CEO out of bed faster and adopting new tech if it's revenue or if it's cutting costs, right?
Yeah. And what about founders in the UK? What's kind of keeping them up at night, but not maybe making them jump out of bed very fast in the morning?
I think you want us to say Brexit. That's really nicely asked. So Brexit, but it's just tough, right? I think the pandemic is more kind of top of mind, and again, whether it's fundraising or talent, or how do you keep your team sort of mentally fit and whatnot. So Brexit is, we were saying, kind of ignorance right now, but also I think we as investors and companies as well, you can't be schizophrenic the way our government is being schizophrenic. So I think that's where the ignorance comes from, is like, all right, when we have real policy, whether there is a deal or there's not a deal, will be more, there's plans in place, but which to trigger, I think it depends on where the policy is taking us.
Daniel, do you think people are kind of thinking enough about Brexit, or do you think actually kind of, people in other places in Europe think it's going to be more of a big deal, more of a hit to the London startups ecosystem than it actually will be?
Well, the reality is we still don't really know, which is the crazy thing. Look, I think everyone went through a deep thought process, however long ago it was now, 2 years or whatever, and started building contingencies based on what was possible to forecast. So I think a lot of fintech firms have worked out, what to do if the banking license, passporting changes, for example, they weren't out. And that's kind of been done. I think there's there's potentially a bunch of other stuff which people don't really know about yet. Like, can you store data from outside of the UK on UK servers? Don't know. And I think people are just having to wait, and they're going to have to scramble. And the good news is, startups by definition spend their life scrambling, adjusting, taking on the next challenge and getting on with it. So they're kind of trained to deal with that. I think they're much more concerned about the pandemic, because for a bunch of reasons. One, some of them have been big beneficiaries, and they kind of work out, well, how fast do we take advantage of this faster digitalization of the area we're in, but also be mindful that the world could change and capital could become more scarce. But actually, more on the human side, I think the first wave of shutdown was kind of, okay, we're going to do that. We'll be out of the office for a couple of months. Off we go. And people kind of go on with it. This second round we're going through now is much more difficult to deal with, because I think it's more of a psychological blow. People don't quite know what's going to happen. The rules are a bit confusing. And the economic stimulus is uncertain. So there's a lot more to grapple with now, I think.
Yeah, and Reshma, what ways have you kind of seen your portfolio adapt, or what are some kind of reactions to the pandemic, or ways they've kind of pivoted or changed doing things internally? You've got a big portfolio that you're kind of seeing across them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest sort of benefit of the pandemic / what we were most worried about with Brexit has been around talent and how hybrid to make your company, how remote to make it, how much to concentrate on one location or one office. And I think that's amazingly sort of thrown that all open, right? And also, if you see companies like Google and Twitter and so forth talk about sort of fully remote forever, that's again sort of a guidance, right, for startups that are hoping to be as big one day. So that's really kind of top of mind. Then is the talent is sort of we have a company called Boundless, for example, that allows you to bring on remote talent and be compliant in that particular jurisdiction. Pento with automated payroll and so forth. So it's a lot around talent and how to, thinking about payments and compliance in local areas, how to get teams collaborating better, more efficiently. We did Rift together, for example, with Balderton. Those are all, along that theme. And lastly is just health. Whether that's sort of pandemic health, right, or beyond that, which is probably even more crucial, is mental health. So we have a company called Spill, for example, which has been growing very, very fast. It helps employers, give access, or PEPI, which helps employers give access around sort of menopause and during birth process and whatnot. So those are the three areas. Like, how do we pay and be compliant? How do we get collaboration? How do we, keep our team healthy and happy?
Interesting. And you mentioned kind of companies obviously looking to become, we want to be Google one day, and I feel like Spotify, Swedish company, is one of the kind of, Europe's, company that people look up to in Europe. What is there a kind of special Swedish startup characteristic that either of you have noticed?
I mean, there's just some generic answers around kind of liberal culture and being understated and modest, which I think is which actually are qualities I love. And actually, Daniel Ek, prior to Balderton, I was with another firm we invested in Spotify, so I got to see him up close and watch that journey. And he doesn't pop up and make a big fuss. He's just kind of this is what I'm doing. I'm going to get on and do it. And I like that a lot, right? Let's just get down to business. But I'm not sure it's lacking elsewhere. I mean, I think the DNA of great entrepreneurs is kind of well understood and spotted all over the place now, and people can deliver. So I expect there to be more Spotify-sized companies coming from Germany, coming from the UK, coming from France in the coming years. Certainly the mindset and the ambition is there to do that, and I think the capability is as well.
And do you Reshma, think of kind of like countries as having specific, the startups from there having specific kind of characteristics or expertise, or is it all becoming a lot more kind of mixed than that these days?
I think it's really changed in a decade plus. It is much more mixed, and what's I think been interesting to watch is also sort of founders moving right at the beginning to another country. We were just on a pitch yesterday with a French founder who's living in Estonia and starting up there, and sort of the space he's in. TransferWise has big operations there, so he's looking at sort of recruiting talent from there, and it's Estonia, right? So it makes a lot of sense. And just what I've thought, 12 years ago, sort of a French founder moving to Estonia, no way. So I think that's the more interesting bit, rather than we don't think of anymore now. Germany is sort of industrials, right, and France is sort of deep tech, or it is spread well across. You have UiPath, sort of deeper tech coming out of Romania. So yeah, what's interesting, I think I would say is, if you take Sweden, Denmark, we have several Danish founders as well, is they are looking outward. And I think with London Capital, it matches really well, because I think London Capital particularly is looking outward all the time. Whether, for us, I think London looks at Cambridge as a whole other place, equally as we do to Stockholm or to Berlin. So I think that matches up really well. And I think maybe that's why we sort of don't look at founder, or don't think of them in any different way than a Berlin founder or a Paris founder.
Amazing. I think our time is up, so I should head back to Mimi in Stockholm on that note.
So much, Amy, and the panel in London, and I love the way that the Swedish and the Nordic founders actually match the maybe London capital or UK capital. Well, I mean, I think first of all, very interesting to hear about the adjustments that obviously startup founders, startup founders are better at adjusting probably to both the pandemic and to Brexit was mentioned. But I mean, for you investors, I think Brexit, for example, is just one interesting thing. I mean, did you change anything in your particular way of investing or talking to your portfolio companies when it came to Brexit?
No, not yet. I'd say that, I mean, our main focus is deep tech and the climate emergency. So we're investing in deep tech companies, in green tech companies. And, that's to say it doesn't really matter so much where they're based or COVID or not. It's the same main focus and the same problem we're looking at. Yeah. What we do see, though, for our startups is, I mean, it's one of the wonderful things about being in a startup that you don't have to have like a policy for everyone. Like you can never work at the office again, or you have to stay home till after Christmas. You can say, well, let's see how it goes. And, the ones who really want to work at the office, go do that. And that's a really nice thing to be able to give that flexibility and not have people forced to work from home or forced to work from the office.
Yeah. What do you say, Johan?
We invest so much for the long term, and that we don't think. Naively, we don't think about it that much. We think that the best entrepreneurs will figure it out. They will navigate through Brexit, etc., etc. Certain areas like fintech, there's a regulatory aspect that we may take into account, but naively, we don't think about it that much. No. The entrepreneurs will navigate through it. And there are so many great entrepreneurs in the UK, all over UK, not London, Bristol, Manchester, that I think that they will figure it out. Actually,
I've met a few companies in London that actually had Swedish founders in fintech and so on, and they haven't moved out of London, because of Brexit.
There may be some short-term turbulence, but
But what do you think about, I mean, obviously he was mentioning about climate tech and also vertical farming. I mean, that's not maybe down your alley, Tor, but I mean, especially that deep tech investments coming from the UK are the greatest in Europe. And I mean, how do you think that Sweden is matching up with the deep tech?
Well, we have great R&D here and lots of wonderful innovators, and we put a lot of money into that. And then the issue is going from that to really commercializing more of these companies. And I mean, to all this thing, entrepreneurs and other entrepreneurs or wantrepreneurs that are listening, I think that thinking about, when you're thinking of starting a company, to go out and look for those deep tech people and help them or work with them to commercialize that deep tech, and that will make a huge difference, because Sweden still has a way to go on that side.
Yeah. Now we're actually going to go to one of your favorite places, Tor. We're going to go to New York.
Yeah.
Yes. But, or why not, end with a little bit of art. Here's a Sting company that makes finding art a lot easier than it was before. Here's Barnaby's.
My name is Christopher Barnikov, and I'm co-founder of Barnaby's Group. Barnaby's is a group of 3 verticals. We have a meta search engine that makes the industry of auction and antiques searchable for anyone. And we have technology that we provide the auction industry with, and we have an online valuation service. The idea behind Barnaby's was actually born from my own experience. I had never previously had any contact with the traditional auction industry. I was looking for a specific painting, and I browsed a couple of auction sites, and it struck me, why isn't there a user-friendly search tool that can give me access to the whole market? Today, Barnaby's exists in 8 markets. As a meta search engine, we're the biggest service in the world, and our technique provides around 150 auctioneers with auction tech. In New York, we have the Barnaby's office. The US market is around 40% of the world market, and there exists around 7,000 auctioneers. I would say I'm proud of that we have created a group that basically gives anyone access to this market of arts and antiques and collectibles. And this will mean in the long run that the market will mature and it will grow. The ultimate goal is to build an ecosystem. If you want to sell something, if you want to buy something, if you want to read about something, if you want to transport something, if you want to insure something, Barnaby's will provide the necessary tools.
Great to hear about Barnaby's. And with that, I'm going to turn to you, Anna, and ask, well, how is the auction tech in New York?
Well, everything here is definitely in a different mode than it was 6 months ago, but we are starting to see the sunrise, not only outside our windows, but I think in terms of just business picking back up again. So we are happy to see our friends at Barnaby's slugging away, and also so many of the other businesses that we work with. So we're feeling cautiously optimistic that we're getting back to normal here slowly but surely. And I would like then to welcome my two guests here today. We are at Gateway, and they made the trip over to us today, which we really appreciate. Avantika Dang, who represents Plum Alley, and Ryan Darnell from Max Ventures. And we are going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the startup scene in New York today. And Ryan, I'm going to start with you. You have Swedish roots. Talk about that just a little bit, but also what you're seeing in terms of that here in the US today.
Yeah, sure. So I founded Max Ventures with Sophie Stenbeck, who's Swedish American. I would say her family has deep roots in Sweden, the Nordic region. And we've been investing for 6 years now, New York based, but invest around a third of our investments in the Nordic region, most of them specifically in Stockholm. And look, I mean, it's when you look at the world today, it's increasingly. I don't think the trend of tech companies being global earlier has really slowed down. That's a trend that stopped. The trend of tech entrepreneurs getting on an airplane and going to see their customers in person right now is temporarily stopped. But the long-term trend of companies being global much earlier, specifically in places like the Nordics, hasn't slowed down.
Yeah, and you have the two startups in your Stockholm studio that have then launched and are growing on the U.S. market. How are they doing? And is this a more challenging time then? I mean, how do you launch a company in the U.S. from Sweden in the time of COVID today?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it depends. The answer is, one, you need great partners. It's like I said, you can't be on the airplane, you can't fly over and see your customers face to face. But that kind of exists, whether you're local or not, because everything's happening remote right now. So, I mean, the things that haven't changed is you need to know who your customer is. You need to know what the problem is, whether it's an individual or business, and you need to understand acutely like how you've created a product that's solving that, right? And like really understanding how to communicate that value proposition to them, how to get in touch with the right people, what type of people to bring on board and hire to help you do that. Like all those things haven't changed. Just the mode of how and the tactics of how you accomplish them have obviously changed in the short term. But the things you still have to really be great at to build a lasting company, and they haven't changed.
So would you say you had, 2 or 3 of your sort of most important, best pieces of advice for anyone who's considering a U.S. establishment?
Sure. One, find great partners. Because like whether you can be there in person or not, I think having people who, whether they're investors, whether they're employees, whether they're advisors, whoever it may be, having people who can, help you understand how to capitalize your business long term, especially if you're seeking out U.S. investors, how to bring on talent, like how to source, like where the talent is locally and where to look for it and how to recruit it, and then just thinking about really good business development partners early on, or customers who can help, be early customers and validate what you're trying to build from a product standpoint.
So let's talk about Klarna, one of your big kids.
Yeah.
And what does it look like for them today? And what's the competition? And What are they doing to stand out?
Yeah, so I mean, just from an outsider's point of view, I think just we're very active in the digital commerce world. I mean, if you look at, there's obviously, Klarna's was an early mover in the space. They've been incredibly successful. You look in the US, there's a company called Fern, founded by Max Lufton, who's a very similar product. And both companies, it sounds like, are thriving. I mean, you're looking at, kind of a once in a lifetime shift from purchases going from the distribution point being physical retail to online, and COVID's just accelerated that, right? So this is one of those kind of points in time where, whether it's Klarna, whether it's a firm, whether it's someone else, they're all thriving, and their market has accelerated, by 3 to 5x over the last 6 months. And so, I would be just generally bullish on Klarna and anyone else like executing in the sector right now.
Yeah. Avantika, tell us about Plum Alley. You invest only in female-founded companies. I like that. Tell us a little bit about what your model looks like today, too, and how it might be affected by COVID and so forth.
Absolutely. Well, first, I'd like to congratulate Sting for being in its 19th year. That's very impressive. So congratulations to the King team. Just a clarification on Plum Alley, we don't just invest in female-founded companies. We do. Our thesis is wrapped in sector, stage, and a gender mandate towards diversity. So we sit a layer above only investing in female-founded to truly look for diversity at the founding level. So we invest in female-founded companies, but also co-founded. So a great example is Mammoth Biosciences, 4 co-founders, 2 female co-founders, 2 male co-founders, and one of the female co-founders just a couple of weeks ago won the Nobel Prize, 10 days ago won the Nobel Prize, or maybe 2 weeks ago, Dr. Jennifer Doudna for science and chemistry, and the first time in history that we've actually seen 2 women win the Nobel Prize together. So, we're very excited about that. Our gender thesis in terms of diversity is really wrapped in not just because it should make sense, but because it's the economic outcome that we're looking for in terms of outsized returns. And so if you look at data that your large, big consulting firms have done and big banks globally have done in terms of longitudinal assessment, what we're hearing and seeing over and over again is that over a period of 5 years, you're actually looking to gain an additional 10% on your financial returns. And that may be driven by revenue, it might be driven by profit, EBITDA, your EPS, all of those financial metrics are actually 10% higher. So you're looking at 10 additional points when you've got a gender diverse team. And then similarly on the startup, entrepreneurial journey, diverse founding teams have better outcomes, financially from a scale perspective. And so our thesis is that if we, albeit not occupy the entire circle, because we've got other ecosystem partners like Ryan that are doing a good amount and a good job of addressing the seed stage and not necessarily focused on a diversity thesis, we feel that it's an underserved market, and we're predisposed positively to having better returns by starting on a diving board that's better equipped.
And how does that translate into looking at the Swedish tech and startup scene? I mean, does it translate really well there, or?
I think so. I think it falls within the general thesis of diversity, right? So if you want to look at portfolio management, the best way to manage upside but also downside risk is to diversify your portfolio. And one of the elements of diversity is driven through geographic. But I think in the Swedish landscape, in the Nordics, we do find that the ecosystem, very early on, even from the educational level, is much more diverse, be it through gender or just thought process. They have more access to technology. So we believe our thesis is that you're actually to find better technology entrepreneurs coming out of those ecosystems. And we're focused on deep tech and frontier healthcare as our 2 sector focuses, which has borne us really well through COVID. It's kept us really busy, fortunately. 2/3 of our portfolio, over 70-75% of them are overperforming. Brian and I were sharing notes earlier towards that, which is, when you've got a thesis that withstands what we refer to as TASM, or technologies assessing situational markets, those portfolios tend to do well, in situational markets like a COVID, like a recession, others that we haven't quite anticipated yet. And they tend to do well in markets, that are generally from a macro perspective and a political environment perspective doing well. And what we find in the Nordic regions is that diversity helps hedge both the upside but also the downside risk management, especially with focuses towards technology and deep tech.
So one of the companies you've invested in is Einride.
Hi.
And
hi, Anna. Sorry to interrupt you guys. We seem to have a little bit of a sound problem across the pond, as we say. And so we're going to have to leave the New York panel and you. And thank you so much for actually joining us anyway. And I'm sorry to cut this a little bit short. So, but I think it's the things we could hear a little bit about, Plum Valley and the investments there and so on. It's interesting. I think she mentioned the Nordics now, and Sweden being very diverse and so on. And obviously, there was a report just recently that 1.3% of the capital went to female founders in 2019, which is not a great number, I suppose. But here we have you, Johan, at Creandum. How many women did you invest in last year? Do you remember?
I think 2.
Yeah.
No. Over last year, 1. I think so. No, we're not there we want to be.
But it was more than 1.3%.
Yeah.
Hopefully they got a little bit more money than 1.3% of capital as well.
But hey, it's in front of every agenda. I think every time we meet a startup today, we talk about diversity and inclusion, and even before we invest. So, and we make it one of our core things that we start out to work with the startups today. So. But there's so much more we can do also in our own firm. I think out of the last 7 hires, 5 were women, but still in our investment team, it's 2 out of 10 female. So there's a lot of work still to do.
Well, let's hope it improves until 2020's numbers coming up, so you don't have to write those kind of reports. But to New York. Tor, we could hear a little bit about, what to focus on, about, having partners and customers already when you go to New York or the US, and having long-term investors, perhaps. How do you look upon that?
Well, we're trying to align as much as possible from here, obviously, because it's most efficient that way. And we've been striving to get customers with international recognizable brands, such as Walmart, for example. But we also have Toyota and Volkswagen and so on. So that's one way of approaching it, and then also of course, to align the way we communicate the product and the way the product speaks.
Yeah, of course. I suppose as well as with you, Caroline, that's a bit similar, with the big brands, etc. Because obviously, Volumental, you also have big brands.
Yeah, and yes, of course. And there we work closely with American companies, and footwear is based everywhere. There is a fly here. There's footwear in many more cities in the US, but we do go to New York regularly, and there's a great National Retail Federation big show there, which is where we, for example, launched our product for the first time in 2016. And
I think it's quite interesting with both of your companies, really, because I suppose that you both have a lot of wisdom to actually bring to these brands that you actually work with, because you, with all ears, are actually, showing them probably a completely new way of actually measuring how they reach out.
Yeah, and also we find stuff about them that they didn't know about before. Yeah. So.
And it's the same. We know more about shoes, how their customers' feet look and how they fit in their shoes than almost any of our brands do. Yeah. So that's a great situation to be in. Yeah.
I'm just actually going to head over to you as well, Johan, as well, because I was thinking about Klarna. They mentioned it, that Klarna is obviously, growing in the US, and it's going to be one of the biggest and most important markets for them. And but I also know that Sebastian Simikovsky, the founder, I think tweeted this morning about how he didn't like how Swedish media was after him, and I think it's just interesting. I mean, do you think Klarna has an easier time in the other markets, or are the Swedish media harsh?
I don't know. I think first of all, I think Klarna is an absolute fantastic company. It's going to be a global bank. Like you know SEB and Swedbank and Handelsbanken in Sweden, they have no chance. This is going to be a multi, even $100 billion company, I'm sure. And it was started from something where what the consumers wanted. They wanted to pay online with an invoice later. And so it was a consumer-driven thing that they got a great product market fit for, and then they transformed the company to be a much easier shopping solution, so checking out, not by invoice but also paying direct, of course. And now they're sort of using this consumer reach by creating an online bank. And today, the revenues from financing, so meaning the lending activities, is less than 1/3. So I think Sebastian is right. I think he's not the bad guy creating bad consumer debt. There are lots of other companies in Sweden doing that. So to the US, I think they will have it's even a better product market fit there because people are used to buying with credit cards. But anyway, I think he's doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, you had
we were the first investors in Klarna, so they were sitting in our dining room, the three of the guys who started it many years ago now, and I agree that it's just they have really transformed how you can shop online, and that's something we should be happy for as well. And of course, people can get annoyed, and maybe I think in Sweden we are still not that great at celebrating successes, and that's something we could work on a bit. But really, they have moved to make it so much easier to shop online, and that's a great thing.
I believe they have a little bit of a PR reputation problem, and they should perhaps embrace the situation and act on it instead of blaming the media.
Thank you, Tor. As a media person, I think you're correct, but although I do write for a UK-based company. But I think it's very interesting how the Swedish companies somehow, the ones that actually get big, like Spotify, Klarna now, that they all seem to get on the bad side of Swedish media. I mean, is it something to do with that we don't have, that we don't expect people to actually start challenging us as startup founders and so on? Because obviously all startups has a honeymoon period, but then perhaps it ends, and then, what do you think?
No, I think that's right. As you become larger, you get more exposed from constituents and stakeholders. But somehow Jante is still there, and we're caught somewhere between lagom and Jante. And then as we get bigger, I think that's the conflict that you see here. But I think you just have to live with that. You have to if you become a successful company, you have to maneuver with that. I mean, Spotify has similar challenges as they grow content, etc., etc. So.
Yeah.
I just think that now that we have so many more successful entrepreneurs in Sweden and they are paying back and really investing into the ecosystem, that should also show up then and making Sweden a better place, and that's great. So you can't just be annoyed that there are Swedish companies that are doing, that are expanding into the world. That's a good thing.
Sure. I mean, I think it's great because we have. All ears here. We have Volumental, and you're both expanding into the world, and obviously all the Creandum's portfolio companies here in Sweden are, if they haven't already expanded into the world, they probably are going to soon. So that's fabulous, obviously. Well, I mean, I think that's actually about it from Stockholm here in our panel. So I would like to really thank you. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Tor. Thank you, Johan, for joining me here today. And with that, I'm going to head off to Per.
So what an interesting afternoon we'd had. And I'm sorry for the technical problems, but it has been an interesting afternoon.
It has been, definitely. I think, I mean, I'm going to go away with lots of takeaways, but what about you, Per? What are yours?
There's a few things I picked up, and it seems to be sometimes that it actually is an advantage come from a small country, because you need to sort of go the International Day one. That's one thing I sort of picked up here. Another thing that I think Caroline said here was if you have an international team, truly international team, then it's sometimes easier when you're going to enter those countries because you have people who know the culture and things like that. So that's two of my takeaways. There was actually something I heard that I thought I was going to ask you about also as a reporter. We heard a little bit about if it's a trend, I don't know, but it's the sort of the climate thing, and lots of things are happening in that sector. As a reporter, do you see that companies in that sector, startups, actually go in that direction, also do some sort of greenwashing or things like that? Do you see anything like that?
Well, we've spoken about this before, and yes, I do find that there is greenwashing within the startup scene, but however, not in all companies and not in all sectors. But well, we're going to have to look into that so we don't, so the investors don't actually invest in things that's not what it's supposed to be, I suppose.
No, that's we hope not that. There was another thing I would like to have your comment on, if you can. I think it was Rainer who said that what was nice things about startups from Sweden. He said many companies from the Nordics have a really good product market fit with nice user interface and sort of beautiful products. Why is that, do you think?
That's a difficult question, actually.
I know.
I don't know. Is it because that we are that we have such great education system here, and that's why we, or is it because that we? I have actually no idea. That is a difficult question. Can you answer it?
Yeah, it's Ingvar Kamprad, IKEA.
Okay,
that's because
that's
of
why.
him. That's probably
that
why.
was a good answer.
So now it's time to conclude. Thank you to everyone in our studios. Thank you, Mimi, and everyone for watching. For an interesting and insightful event. To learn more about Sting and attend future events, go to sting.co. See you all soon and take care.
Bye-bye from Stockholm.
Bye-bye.